This guitar was a feast of a find. Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. So let's paint the story here. It's right after Thanksgiving. I wasn't working that day, but I decided to log on to Reverb just to see, have I missed anything? And to my surprise, listed just 10 minutes prior, one of my favorite 70s Les Pauls. It's in phenomenal condition. The price was more than I wanted to pay, but after reviewing the condition, I knew there was no way that this would not sell, even in our current market. So even though I really shouldn't have been buying anything, they got me post-Thanksgiving feast. So let's go ahead and see if it was worth it, and hopefully it arrived safely. I will say this case is a little bit weird. I've never seen one exactly like this. I'm questioning whether it's actually authentic Gibson. Like, it's got all the regular styling, so maybe it's just a shortly lived variation. Or I suppose it could have been the same manufacturer, but like a different case. But inside here, it's another Basalt blue sparkle. But this one is supposed to have been cleaner than the other one that we had just redocumented. Isn't it funny how that ends up working? But what really caught my attention for this one is just how clean the lacquer is. You can really tell that on the Gibson logo there. So the story on this one is it was actually in the collection of a guitar store owner, and I don't know if they're having like financial troubles, a bunch of inventories not selling, or now is just the right time. Because I looked at the rest of their shop and it doesn't seem like they deal in Gibson guitars, so this is something they've probably had for a while, and they said it was the crown jewel of their collection. And I bet they were surprised when it sold like within 15 minutes for the asking price that they had, but so far this is actually looking to be a pretty nice example. This one has a lot of ringy wood grain on the back, a little bit of a chatoyan dancing. I'm not seeing any discolorations from somebody lubricating the tuners. That is a common issue on these. And I thought it was kind of interesting that we still have the original store that sold this, or at least a store that sold it at one point in time. It was common back in the day to put this little sticker and or decal on the guitar. And thankfully, this is a survivor without a headstock repair, and nobody's ever messed with our tuners, which is just fantastic. Now, I still think this one would benefit from another clean and polished job, but in the listing it said it was all original, and I was uncertain of the knobs in those photos. It looked like they had been replaced, but in person now I can definitely tell those are stock and original. So now I happen to have two of these, and you might notice, hey, this one's like a lot darker. And I think a lot of that just comes down to the ambering of the lacquer. You can see just how much clearer this one is as compared to this. I honestly prefer my nice dark sparkly one. This one has a lot more of that yellowish grain fill too, whereas this one's that nice dark mahogany color. It's got a lot of wood grain going on for it. And I think that's why this one is so evenly aged, because this one got the yellow grain fill in certain areas more so than others. But this one's also like early 1975-ish, whereas this one is just a little bit earlier as far as the serial number is concerned. They're very similar. Look at how different the headstocks are. This must have been like a transitional time period when they start to make the headstock just a little bit bigger. So now I'm kind of torn. Which one do I keep? I vastly prefer the slightly darker looking one. There's definitely elements that I like of each. This one does have a little bit of finish checking down here. And now that I got it in the light, there is quite a bit of buckle worming on this example. Let's go ahead and throw it on the workbench to take a look at its parts and specs. Alright, 2 hours later, here it is clean. I think I've made a new discovery. There are two different versions of Basalt Blue Sparkle. I thought the first one I documented was a little bit lighter than the one that we had just looked at a couple of months ago. I'm convinced this one is solidly within 1974 because we still have patent number waterslide decal on the backside of our mini humbuckers, and it's in 75 when they switch over to the base plate embossed version. And that's what that darker one looked like. So if you compare this to the first one I documented that also had these humbuckers, it had a very similar finish to it. So then I decided to look online. Now that I know to look for it, yes indeed, there does appear to be two different hues to this finish. Now, is some of this like what I was thinking earlier, the yellowing of the clear coat? Yes, but no at the same time. Here's another example that's pretty much green at this point, but you can tell it originally started life as blue. But look at the metal flake within the finish. It is vastly different than this also greened over lighter blue one. And I just can't believe I've never noticed it before, but now that I know it, I'm seeing it everywhere. Here's another comparison with slightly lesser yellowed versions. Once again, you've got a very boisterous sparkly one, whereas you have the more fine one over here, also with the color difference. This one unaged with aged, but you can tell they're both slightly darker blue ones. And just a few more photos just for good measure, because blue Sparkle Top Deluxes are the best. When I reviewed the Guitar Center 2018 reissue of this guitar, I remember making the comment, oh, it's so dark, it's way darker than the original. I think they were trying to reissue version 2. But now that I've refreshed my memory and looked at it, I don't really know what they were doing with that reissue. It's not quite a match to either, but it is cool. Pickup route-wise and finish and the blacklight test, all that good stuff, it comes back perfect on these. None of them have been refinished. This Deluxe also seems to have been capped off with a mahogany block, but you can see the additional pancake layer right here, and it is a transitional neck tenon. These utilize a metal bar that gets screwed into place, then your mini humbuckers go into there. And here's a good look at the bridge pickup cavity route on this one as well. It's got the same stuff going on, but I found it interesting that the route on this one made it so they had to use a different screw. So we've got the big one for there, but since they can't secure it there, they had to use a smaller one for the other location. But our pickups are nice and healthy. Bridge reads 6.37 k ohms, neck position at 622, and the middle, just for fun, 3.14. And this still has the original ABR1 style, because that's the other thing. These were made both in Kalamazoo, the original plant, as well as Nashville, so maybe there's a difference in hue to the Nashville ones. But I don't think that's the case on these two, because my darker blue one has the tortoiseshell side markers, so I know that's a KZ made one too. Here's the look at that bridge. It's the wire retainer version, and it looks like this on the back. And our tailpiece is full weight and appears to be error correct. We can take a second to appreciate this beautiful light blue finish. Now there's a few areas where it looks like the metal flake got bunched up or something, but no, they're actually just small micro dings. But I think you have to be here in person to see most of that, and you can tell there's probably a little bit of sweat absorption here. That's very common on these, where they turn a little bit more of a greenish hue. The top is pretty well preserved on this one, aside from a few micro dings. Here's those finish checking marks I was talking about earlier. Now if you hold the guitar at this angle, you can see some finish checking between the pickup and the bridge. There's a little bit in between the pickups, but you have to be at real extreme angles to see some of these. And there's some right there where the pickguard is. We've got our original knobs, 2 volumes, 2 tones. You can see the pickguard also dinged this one. That's very common on these. Pickguard itself looks like such. I thought that was cool to see. No replaced part there. That's still got the age to it. Moving on from our likely 3-piece maple top and pancake body, we've got our mahogany neck with rosewood fretboard. Frets polished up quite nicely. Somebody definitely level recrowned these at one point in time. One of the inlays got a little bit chewed up. If you catch it in the light, you can see the chatter marks and you can actually feel them, so that's a bit of a shame. And the frets do have wear, pretty much all even up and down here, but thankfully, this is one of my first Sparkle Top Deluxe that doesn't have excessive fingernail wear. I'm not going to say it has none, because there's like a little bit right there. But usually the long fingernail players liked these guitars. So could it use a level recrown again? Maybe. But we were able to get all that yucky fingerboard cheese off of it. But we've got our 24 3/4 inch scale with 12-inch fretboard radius. And our bone nut measures 1.69 inches and increases to 2.06 by the 12th. First fret neck depth 0.82 and 1.02 by the 12th. However, you're starting to hit that heel, so we'll take it at the 10th for 0.97. Here's a look at that neck profile, first fret and 12th fret. You can see how rounded it is. And usually these are pretty slim, so that's nice. This one does feel a little bit more rounded than usual. It almost has a U-like shaped neck to it, but I think it's just a slightly deeper C. Check out this headstock, it's beautiful. Now if you get it in unflattering light, are there string change scratches? Yes. However, the nearly unaged lacquer is just unheard of. It's great. This was a well-preserved example as far as like not being left out in the sun, not being in the home of a smoker. Now, our truss rod doesn't appear to ever have been used, but sadly, you can only tighten it, you can't loosen it. And this had flat wound strings on it, and it wasn't strung up to pitch, but I sighted the neck and it seemed like we needed to loosen the rod a little bit. I'll need to play with that when I put my regular strings on it, just to make sure things are within spec. Because if you ever have a truss rod that you can't loosen it, and you need to get rid of relief, usually you have to train the neck with like really heavier strings to put the natural bow in, and then you can start to do it. Or at least that's how I understand it. Moving on to the backside now, we can see all that beautiful ringy wood grain. This cleaned up great, but it really is unfortunate that somebody had jean rivets or a belt buckle just worming through the entire back of this thing. But at least for the most part, none of it breaks the finish, except for down here. Somebody's strap wore through. The backside of my darker blue one is definitely in a little bit better condition than this one, but at least it presents well. But what's really strange is the pancake layer is obnoxiously dark on this one. It's to the point where I almost think it's made out of mahogany rather than the usual maple. But yet there's other places where it looks a little bit more natural, where it caught more of that yellow grain fill, because this example still used that. In fact, it's kind of cool to see how the back piece of mahogany is way darker than the middle piece there. That's just a natural variation. But looking inside our control cavity, there's that mysterious G. We saw that on the 20th anniversary Les Paul Custom with the cool 2-piece flame maple top. At that point I was hoping it'd be George Harrison, but I've seen it on a few other guitars, so it must mean something. These pot codes date to 1974, 37th week. This one matches as well. This one we can only tell the 74. But that one also matches the 37th week, so I would assume that is a perfect set. Now the caps changed a lot in this era, so those may or may not be original. Now the back plates, they're brown. This looks correct to me. However, I've never personally seen this. So this looks okay, right? But then you flip it over to the back and it's like a parchment paper type thing. I'm not sure if somebody replaced that at some point or Gibson used something different. I mean, I haven't documented that many early 70s Deluxe. But unfortunately, our jack plate has definitely been replaced because they were initially plastic, they broke. That's a very common part to get replaced. But it looks like our strap buttons are good, so that's always nice. And once again, I do want to emphasize, you still have that yellow grain fill. It's just some examples got a little bit too crazy with it, but it catches certain areas more so than others. Here's our 3-piece mahogany neck. Got our volute up here, no breaks, cracks, or repairs. And the neck is in phenomenal condition, that's a plus. Maybe a few small impressions, but my other one did have a small ding on the edge. But then it's always important to verify you have the original tuners on these, because that's a big deal. Everything looks good, that's just the impressions of the tuners, but what was strange are these two. They have these wooden dowels. So we got two options. It was a sloppy install job at the factory. They did them crooked and they had to fix them. Or somebody outside of the factory fixed Gibson's sloppy job because they were loose or something. Maybe they got dinged. Not really possible to know. However, I do not see any evidence of other tuners. So at least we don't have any reaming. There's our serial number, made in USA stamp. And I found out this was a shop in Colorado. I called the number, it just says to enter your extension. Doesn't say anything about Bobby's Music Center, and operator didn't work. So I would assume they're no longer in business because I could only find one Google search that matched them anyways with that phone number and name. The tuners look like this. They all say Gibson Deluxe. They've got the double rings. They're the vintage bushing style. And then they have these markings on the inside. And now our blacklight test. This kind of shows you those dings I was talking about. Right there. Somebody must have had like a bracelet or something on, or maybe a coil cord hit it. Here you can also tell the yellowing of the lacquer right here from somebody's arm sweat. So it was actually played quite a bit. Our plastics are glowing pretty good here. Everything looks fine in this area. So far out of the ones I've blacklight, the pickguard always is a little bit different, so they must have used a different plastic material for those. But there we can verify our knobs are all good, and no touch-ups over the front. Base of the headstock is nice and clean. However, we can see a couple of dings on the top clear coat right there, probably from where it hangs on a stand. And what looks like a little bit of top edge rub or something there. But I could kind of see that in regular lighting too. So not perfect by any means, you got a few small dings. Moving on to the back. Honestly, I'm a little bit unsure about this area. It is darker in the wood grain, so it could be that it didn't take as much of this filler, or it's just a variation and that's why it looks different. Because if you go to the edge, this all seems to match that okay, and whoa! Okay, there is significant finish rub right there. So this is why you do the blacklight test. You never know what the true condition is. So personally, I think that's fine. Is there a small chance it could be a touch-up? Maybe. Continuing over the rest of this, you can kind of see some of those buckle worming marks I was talking about. There's some dings there. And then here you can see all the areas where that strap rubbed through it. And you've got some of those in the soloing area right here too, as well as some here. And a couple of dings around the edge. Back to the base side, you can see a couple more over here too. At least the pancake body's not separating or anything like that. And I was shocked to see this. There's even a little bit of clear coat wear on our neck. So she was played despite being relatively good shape. Just some top edge wear. All strung back up, I always love the look of those highly polished frets with the sparkle top finish. But this surviving example has a decent weight, 9 pounds, 11.8 ounces. It's about average for this era. So let's go ahead, plug it in, and hear how this one sounds. A darker blue one, I said it wasn't my favorite Deluxe in the world. I love these little patent number mini humbuckers. I wonder if they changed them or if it was just the base plate, because that neck pickup is so juicy. Sounds more like a P90. Bridge pickup is nice and bitey. But even it has like a certain warmth and roundness to it. And obviously blend them together. Once again, loving that neck position. Now that we know all about this particular Basalt Blue Sparkle Les Paul Deluxe, what are my final thoughts? Really let down that it wasn't necessarily described properly when I had purchased it, but I've got to say, those patent numbered mini humbuckers sound really good in this example. Unfortunately, putting new strings on here and polishing the frets didn't do anything. I think they need leveled and recrowned, and we need to put a little bit of relief into the neck because it's still a buzzy mess. Unfortunately, most of these Sparkle Top Deluxe that I've owned, they're just all terrible. Like, their neck angles are weird, sometimes their frets just aren't that fantastic. So if you're buying one of these to play, there's a reason why a lot of these things got refretted, and it's not just because the frets were low. But at the end of the day, I'm really glad I had purchased this one because I never realized that there were different hues to the Basalt Blue Sparkle, and it all just depends on their year of production. So to recap, the earlier ones will most likely be this lighter blue finish. So you're talking 1974, early 1975. Whereas the later ones appear to have this darker blue sparkle, which I vastly prefer. I think it looks great. But at the same time, I can see why you might prefer that lighter one too. But you also have to remember the headstocks were ever evolving, as well as your Gibson logos. So here you can see the more blocky style that apparently gets introduced around 1975, whereas this has the older version, the 1974, a little bit more rounder and crisp. So that's probably also why it looks a little bit different outside of just the aging. So it was initially meant to be a choose which one you like better, Trogly, but now it's I need to sell something else. I just love the blue sparkle tops too much. All right, Troglodytes, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll catch you tomorrow on the next episode. Take care. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, consider subscribing. I post videos like this every day, and you might even enjoy this next one.